The rule of law is a major part of the Western world, and most human groups have a legal or moral code which guides their actions, usually for the good of society at large. When we consider the origins of the legal system in Britain and the West, often people look to moral guidance, for example institutions like the Church. They certainly have an opinion about right and wrong, and the Bible is often seen as the source of a divine moral code. We even swear by the Bible in court. Alternatively, we look to great civilizations for the origins of law and order. In Britain, we often look to Rome and Romans as the people who brought civilization and in turn the rule of law to these wild shores. However, many Romans believed that law was given to them by others, in this case the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus. A brief overview of archaeology shows a history of law and order which is older than you might think, and not so conventionally formed as is often assumed. One way to infer laws is to seek out punishments doled out by society. In Germany, around 5000 BC, the linear band ceramic culture was on the rise. In 1983, in the town of Talheim, archaeologists uncovered a mass grave containing a total of 34 skeletons. It is possible that these were hunters and gatherers who refused to convert to the new Neolithic farming lifestyle. It has also been suggested that these killings were motivated by sexual rivalry, access to women. But ultimately, such mass killing needed some form of community consensus. Was this an early corporal punishment? The first proper recorded civil law code comes from Egypt around 3000 BC. Certainly by the time of the 5th dynasty, there were robust legal principles in place. They were guided by the spiritual principle of truth, Ma'at. This was characterized by social equality and impartiality. The vizier, or priest of Ma'at, was later referred to as the judge of Ma'at. And Ma'at guided the application of justice, whether you were high-born and wealthy, or someone's servant. In theory, you would receive the same justice, the same truth. Around 2200 BC, the ancient Sumerian ruler Ur-Nammu attempted to formulate the first proper code of laws. These consisted of a series of simple statements, such as, "If you steal my sweets, then I will chop off your hand." Such statements were further developed around 1760 BC by King Hammurabi. Hammurabi's code, or Babylonian law, was codified and inscribed upon huge stone pillars, so that people might know the law. The punishments were often rather ironic. Stealing from a burning building, for example, was punished by being burned alive. It is thought that Hammurabi's code had a huge effect upon the region, even informing some of the laws in Judaism. Ancient Athens was an early proponent of the rights of citizens, excluding women and slaves. However, despite this, Athens had no legal code per se. There was no word for law. Rather, they acknowledged divine law, those cultural norms which were taken for granted, human decree, that said by people, and customs, that which is done by people. Around 621 BC, Draco wrote the first law code for Athens and Greece. The penalty for many offences was severe, death, hence draconian. In the mid-5th century BC, the people of Rome sent out envoys to Greek colonies to learn of the laws of Greece. This was Rome before the marble of Augustus, and they were crying out for a standardized legal system. Laws were written upon 12 ivory tablets and posted in the forum so that all could read them. They comprised of a series of definitions of civil rights. Over the course of 1,000 years, the Roman legal system developed, though along lines which may seem curious. Legal cases were argued to court along the lines of a speech. The better the orator, such as Cicero, the more success. Typically, judicial precedent was not reported, so each case was effectively judged afresh. However, at least as a Roman citizen, you could not be unjustifiably tortured, and you could insist on your day in court. One of the most serious crimes was patricide, or father killing, the punishment for which was to be tied in a bag with a serpent or a dog or an ape and thrown into the river Tiber. As you might expect, Roman law developed and held sway over the entire Roman Empire. In the 6th century AD, the Eastern Empire effectively became the Byzantine Empire. The emperor who oversaw this change was Justinian I, also known as Justinian the Great. Justinian looked back to the golden age of Roman law and recorded them in his Corpus Juris Civilis, or body of civil law. We shall return to the impact of these laws in just a moment. But now to China. Around 1000 BC, the Zhou dynasty had its inception. Here, rulers enforced laws which reinforced their place in society, filial piety, respect for the ways of the ancestors. This compares with the feudal system in medieval Europe, a ranked society rigidly enforced. For hundreds of years, such laws were carefully inscribed upon bronze cauldrons and also upon documents made of bamboo. People knew their place in society, as enforced by law. There are 5 major punishments from this era, ranging from a tattoo upon the face, through various forms of maiming and dismemberment, all the way up to being drawn and quartered. In 221 BC, the state of Qin obtained supremacy over its rivals. During the Qin dynasty, Lord Shangyang adopted a legalist philosophy. People are fundamentally flawed, and civil rights are to be ignored in service of the state. Corporal punishment could include death by boiling, chariots, beating, permanent mutilation, tattooing, or castration. By the 7th century AD, the Tang dynasty implemented the Tang Code for law. This synthesized legalist philosophy with Confucianism, which taught that human beings would better themselves given the opportunity. This code, in 12 sections, stands as a towering achievement of traditional Chinese law. Meanwhile, in Europe, various legal systems had developed in the wake of the Roman Empire. Under rulers such as Charlemagne, laws inspired by the Byzantine system of laws, and also other Germanic traditions, were thriving. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes which came to Britain at this time brought with them distinctive legal traditions overseen by individual kings. They established large kingdoms where their own laws held sway, and at various times they were either at peace or at war with one another. For the most part, these laws were based upon customs and traditional rights. The kings were the primary legislators. However, this tradition changed with the arrival of St. Augustine around AD 600. With the help of monks, King Ethelbert of Kent issued a set of laws, written in 90 sections. These laws were the first written in English, and notably, crimes against the Church were punished harshly. The rest of Britain, Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall had various regional legal systems. However, in the 10th century, Hywel Dda, King Hywel the Good, took control of much of Wales and decided to amalgamate laws into one Welsh law, Hywel's Code. This code focused upon compensation as opposed to punishment, and seemed to draw upon long-standing local legal traditions. By AD 886, the Vikings had established a foothold in much of Britain. They consolidated their gains into the kingdom of the Danelaw, with a capital at York, Jorvik. The Danelaw, as you might expect, means the land where the law of the Danes holds sway. Contrary to popular belief, Norse society had stringent laws. To this day, the width of many shops in York, the plots of land upon which they are built, are based upon the Viking laws of the city. Some of England's earliest and most enduring laws, therefore, came from the Norse, but all of this, Norse, Saxon, and Celtic law, was about to change. With the year 1066 came the infamous Norman conquest of England, and with it a Norman reckoning of law and the judiciary system. The new English king's powerful judges developed a body of precedent which would become common law. And within 100 years, King Henry II had established a system of royal courts, administered by judges based in Westminster who travelled throughout the kingdom. Henry's reforms ensured a more standardised application of the law, trials by jury, and also a drastic reduction in the number of trials by combat. By the early 13th century, the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, enforced the rights of people and the limitations of the king in law. And in 1536, a year of infamy, King Henry VIII united England and Wales under one legal system, though notably with extreme bias towards the English. This act of union lay the foundation for what is today's legal system of England and Wales. This has been a relatively brief overview of a history of law and order. There are many other documents and legal systems around the world which I simply haven't had time to mention in this video. However, it is clear that the development of legal systems and their limitations takes time. No legal system is simply plucked out of the air, bequeathed, if you will, to a culture. Rather, various societies have attempted to balance the interests of justice, philosophy, and the state in an effort, ultimately, to balance who controls what, who has the power. And thankfully, this debate continues throughout time. However, if you break the law in Archaeosoup Towers, you answer to our resident monster, Fred. True story.